All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Carla Carter. I'm the host for tonight's Basics and Foundation class. We're going to go ahead and get started with the aims. Ms. Phyllis, if you want to go ahead and do the aims for us. I can't hear you, Ms. Phyllis.
Unmute. Okay.
There you go.
First, to help you find and know Yahweh, our Elohim, as he really is and actually exists. Second, to form a nucleus of universal brotherhood of humanity in Yahshua the Messiah without distinction of race or nationality, creed, sex, caste, or color. Third, to investigate the unexplained spirit law or so-called law of nature and the powers latent in man. Fourth, to encourage and promote the study of the scriptures compared to religions, psychology, philosophy, and modern practical and occult science. Fifth, to extirpate current superstition, skepticism, and ignorance. Sixth, to learn, know, and understand the operation of Yahweh's eternal purpose through the dispensations and ages. Seventh, to discern and avoid being deceived by Lucifer, the serpent, the devil, the dragon, or Satan, and his demons operating the mystery of iniquity on earth through the dispensations of time. Eighth, to encourage and promote.
Earnestly contend.
To earnestly contend for the common salvation and faith, which was once delivered unto the sons or children of Yahweh. Ninth, to make known that Yahweh from the beginning ordained, there is no other name given among men whereby man can be saved, saving the name of Yahshua the Messiah. And 10th, to inherit eternal life now in the kingdom of Yahshua the Messiah, with the hope of immortal glorification in the new earth state. Our watchword, peace. Slogan, speak the truth.
All right. Thank you for that, Ms. Phyllis.
You're welcome.
All right, now we're gonna have a prayer by, let's see, who normally doesn't get a chance to give a prayer. Let's see. Ms. Dorothy, can you lead us in prayer tonight?
Yes, I can, honey.
Thank you.
Let's all bow our heart and mind. Oh, Heavenly Father Yahweh, through your son Yahshua, we ask this evening that you work with us and that you teach us and that you show us what we need, because you truly know what we need. And we just want to thank you for all you have already done for us. And we pray and ask you that you give us a continuing understanding of the things that we have not yet come to understand. And the things that we have come to understand, we want to thank you. In the name of your son, Yahshua, let us all say hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Very good. We don't have a scripture listing. Right? All right, we're gonna jump right in. So the just so we're clear, the assignment for this week was for you guys to read Exodus 16 through 20 and give a summary on 16 through 20. But before you get to 16 and 20, kind of give a brief summary leading up to that point, and then break down 16 through 20. So however you, and pick out certain principles and things like that. So no matter what you share, even if you don't get through the 20, it's just, all of it's gonna be good anyway. But I'm anxious to see what y'all got. Who all wants to participate tonight? I know we got Phyllis. Phyllis said she was going first last week. You still going first,
right.
Phyllis?
Yes.
Okay, Phyllis is going first. Janet is being forced to go. All right. Janet, Vanessa is going. Mike is going. I'm sure Shirley, you're participating tonight, right, Shirley? Miss Dorothy is going. Nicole.
Yes.
Okay, Shirley. Nicole, you are too, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Yes, ma'am.
Charmaine, are you participating? I know Miranda is. Are you participating, Charmaine? You gotta unmute yourself. I can't hear you.
Oh, no.
Okay. Miguel, are you participating?
I'm just gonna listen.
Okay. Let's see. Auntie Renee, are you participating? You're on mute. I can't hear you. Let's do it this way. Anybody else participating that I did not call out? If you want to go ahead and speak up now. No? Okay. All right, cool. So we got I got Phyllis, Janet, Vanessa, Mike, Dorothy, Shirley, Nicole, and Miranda. Miranda, I just forced you. Are you participating, Miranda? I'm sorry. Did you do your assignment, Miranda? You got to unmute yourself. Can't hear you.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, because I was going to
Yes,
force you.
I am,
Sorry about
Carla.
that.
I am.
It's
Yeah,
going to
I'm not
make
always
you.
volunteering, but yes, I am, darling. Yeah,
Sorry about that, darling. All right.
I
All
am,
right.
though.
2,
Okay, that's
3,
all right.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. All right. All right. So what we're gonna do? You guys got 10, maybe 15 minutes to speak or whatever to kind of give what y'all is giving you on these particular chapters. I'm anxious to see it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get you guys to mute yourselves out if you're not speaking. If you want me to leave the chart up, I can. If you want me to take it down and pull up the scriptures or whatever y'all need me to put on the screen for you, I can do that. But I'm gonna leave the chart up for now, just so you can kind of use a point of reference, and I can point to certain stuff when you're talking if you want to. But I'm gonna do that probably anyway. But if you're not speaking, mute yourself out so we keep down distortion. And Miss Phyllis, you want to go first?
Yes, ma'am. Okay,
All right, let's get it.
first of all, week before last, you had given us an assignment and you didn't go to the assignment. And I remember very well because I had asked Yahweh to teach me. First I was trying to learn, because the assignment was that for us to learn Jacob's sons' names. And in order, that was the part, in order. And I tried to learn it, and then I said, Yahweh, you got to show me how to learn these names. And so he told me, just sing it. And so I sang it. So this doesn't count. You can't start my time until after I do this, okay? So I'm gonna sing it. Okay, so this is what he gave me, because I asked him and he did. He gave this to me. So Jacob's sons' names, this is week before last lesson. So this is what I got. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Joseph. And he was in Egypt already. That's what I meant to say. He was in Egypt already. So that's what he gave me. So
Okay.
That was
anyway,
very nice.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what he gave me, because I needed to learn how to do it. And I was like, okay, he said, just sing it. And I sang it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, this is, I did a summary I tried to do a summary for the 20 chapters, and I wrote it down. So this is what I have, starting with chapter 1. I've already said Jacob's sons' names. So Israel in Egypt are Jacob or Israel's sons and their household. That's who came down to Egypt because of the famine, totaling 70 souls. Joseph died, his brethren, and that generation. The children multiplied, and the land was full of them. The children of Israel were in bondage in Egypt. The new king said, the people are more and mightier than us. So he set taskmasters to afflict them, but they multiplied even more. The king wanted the midwives to kill the male children at the birth stool, but they didn't, and Yahweh was pleased with them and prospered their households. Amram and Jochebed married and had Moses, a goodly child. She hid him 3 months, then made an ark, put him in it, and laid it in the flags by the edge of the river. His sister looked on him. Pharaoh's daughter came to wash herself, saw the ark, had it fetched, saw the child, and said, this is a Hebrew child. His sister asked if she could get a Hebrew nurse. Pharaoh's daughter said, go and see, go. And she went and got the child's mother. She brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, and she named him Moses because she drew him out of the water. Moses grew up and went out and saw the burden of his brethren, saw an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, and he killed him and buried him in the sand. The second day he went out and saw two Hebrews quarreling. The one that did the wrong said to Moses, are you going to kill me like you did the Egyptian? When Pharaoh heard this, he sought to kill Moses. So he fled to Midian and sat down by a well. The priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and Moses helped them fill their troughs, water their flock, and he drove the shepherds away. Their father Reuel said to go get the man so that he could eat bread with them. Moses was content to stay with Reuel, and he gave Moses Zipporah to wed. She bare him a son, called his name Gershon, because he had been a stranger in a strange land. The king of Egypt died. Israel sighed because of the bondage, and they cried to Elohim, and Elohim remembered the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses kept his father-in-law's flock, and kept his father-in-law's flock and led them to the backside of the desert, to the mountain of Elohim. And an angel of Yahweh appeared in a flame of fire, and the bush burned. It was not consumed. Moses turned aside to see why the bush does not burn. Elohim called to him out of the midst of the bush by his name and told him to not come closer and to take off his shoes, for the place where he stood was holy ground, and that he was the Elohim of his fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he said, he have come down to deliver them and to bring them into a land flowing with milk and honey. Yahweh always said he would be with Moses, and the token that he sent him would be the people, and Moses would serve Elohim upon Mount Sinai. Moses wanted a name to tell who sent him. Elohim said, Ayah, I will be sent him. Yahweh, the Elohim of their fathers. This is his name forever and a memorial forever. That's who sent him. Moses and the elders said to the king, Yahweh, the Elohim of the Hebrew, met with us and said, let us go 3 days into the wilderness to sacrifice Yahweh Elohim. The king will not let them go, but by a mighty hand. Yahweh will stretch out his hand and smite Egypt with wonders, and after that he will let them go. You will have favor with the Egyptians and not go empty. Jewels of silver, gold, and raiment. Moses said to Yahweh, they will not believe nor hearken to his voice. Yahweh gave Moses power signs. To the rod turned into a serpent, his hand in his bosom, leprous as snow. The water from the river poured on dry land turned into blood. Moses gave more excuses to Yahweh and said to him, Yahweh said to him, who made man's mouth? I will be with thy mouth and teach you. He told him Aaron, his brother, can speak well, and that he was on his way to meet him. He said, you speak to him, and I will put words in his mouth. You speak to him and put words in his mouth, and he would be with his mouth and teach him what to do. He would be your spokesman for all the people. Aaron, the mouth of Moses instead of Elohim. Take the rod and do signs. Moses went to Reuel and told him all Yahweh said. He said, go in peace. Yahweh told Moses, all the men are dead which sought after his life. Moses took his sons and wife and the rod of Elohim and returned to Egypt. Zipporah circumcised her son, threw it at Moses' feet, and said, thou art a husband demanding blood because of the circumcision. Moses met Aaron in the wilderness. The people believed the words and signs, bowed their heads and worshiped. Moses and Aaron told Pharaoh, Yahweh said, let my people go, that my people may hold a feast for him in the wilderness. Pharaoh said he didn't know Yahweh and would not let them go. They said, let them go. Ooh. And let them go, or Yahweh will fall upon them with pestilence or a sword. The king said they hinder the people from their works. He gave them taskmasters of the people and their officers also no straw to make brick. Yahweh said with a strong hand he will let them go. Yahweh said he made Moses El to Pharaoh, and Aaron his brother, he'll be his prophet. Yahweh will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply his signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Power signs displayed. Aaron's rod became a serpent. Pharaoh called the wise men and the sorcerers and the magicians of Egypt with their enchantments. Their rods became serpents, and Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. Yahweh hardened Pharaoh's heart. Moses told Aaron to take the rod and stretch it out upon the waters of Egypt, that they may become blood throughout the land, both in vessels of wood and vessels of stone. The magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. Frogs they duplicated it. Frogs they duplicated with their enchantments. Lice, the magician said, this is the finger of Elohim, and they could not duplicate. Neither could they duplicate insects, diseased cattle, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, which could be felt, and Yahweh hardened Pharaoh's heart. One more plague, Yahweh said Pharaoh would let the people out altogether. Yahweh said to the children of Israel, this would be the beginning of months to you, the first month of the year, Abib, take out a lamb without spot or blemish, a male of the first year of the sheep or goats on the 10th day of this month. Keep it until the 14th, kill it between the two evenings, take hyssop, dip it in the blood that is in the basin, strike the lintel and two side posts, eat the flesh in the night, roast with fire, unleavened bread with bitter herbs, his head with his legs and with the inwards, let nothing remain until morning. If so, burn it with fire. Eat with your loins girt, its shoes on your feet, staff in your hand, eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover. The blood shall be a token upon the houses. He will pass over when he see the blood. The destroyer will kill the firstborn man and beast, all the firstborn in the land of Egypt who did not have the blood on their houses, and Yahweh hardened Pharaoh's heart. Now that's what I have, even though I have much more. I was going to condense it and make it sound better, but that's just what I had. And so it was undone, but still that's what I wrote down as far as
Oh no, it was still good.
the beginning.
I still got a lot out of it. I got a lot out of it. Very good. Very good.
Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Yes,
Hallelujah.
ma'am. I'm taking my notes. Hallelujah. All right. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next, Carla.
All right, Mr. Dorothy Good.
All right. I'm going to pick right up where she left off from.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to pick off when the children of Israel, after they put the blood, after that death angel came through and they had to have the lamb in them. And early that morning, they resurrect out of the land of Egypt. Now, as they was leaving the land of Egypt, they saw Pharaoh coming after them because Yahweh hardened his heart. So they looked unto Moses and Yahweh told Moses to use what you got, which was the Holy Spirit. So he told Moses. So Moses told the children of Israel to stand still and see the salvation of Yahweh. So he told Moses, stretch out that rod. And he stretched out that rod and the sea parted. And the east wind came and blew that land dry. Now that east wind, Shua, that's Yahshua, who is salvation. So the east wind blew that land dry. And the children of Israel went on 5 abreast through the Red Sea. Now when they got on the other side, and then Pharaoh tried to come in, So Yahweh caused Pharaoh horses and chariots to have problems. When they got in the midst of that sea, he told Moses to stretch that rod back over the sea, and they heat back up and bust Pharaoh and his host asunder in the Red Sea. Now, when the children of Israel got across, they were so happy. They started singing a song unto Yahweh. So when they got out there in the land of Egypt, Yahweh called Moses atop Mount Sinai and told him, tell the children of Israel to wash and clean up, because against the third day, I'm going to speak my law down unto them. So that which was June the 3rd, and the third month day will be June the 6th. So Yahweh spoke down that law in the sight, in the hearing of the children of Israel. And it was so strong that they was afraid. So they told Moses, you speak to him. But they did hear him speak down the laws unto them. So after they was told to wash and clean up, and then the second, well, I'm getting too ahead of myself, ain't I? So so when they got out there in the land of Egypt, in the winter, they started murmuring because they wanted, first they didn't have nothing to eat. Water. They wanted water. So Yahweh told Moses, smite the rock. So the water came out. Then they were hungry. So what he did, he rained down quail. Now the children of Israel, now what I saw in that was really astonished to me, was that the children of Israel, Yahweh gave them quail. They had quail for 40 years out there in the wilderness. And we complain about eating something 3 or 4 days straight. But they ate quail for 40 years. Because Yahweh provided them quail, like we said, quail on toast, as to say. And they survived out there in the wilderness for 40 years, even though they started murmuring and complaining. And then on the second trip, Yahweh called Moses on top of the mount. I guess I better go back because I'm getting too ahead of myself. I'm going to the 24th chapter then. But I just thought that was something that Yahweh fed them for 40 years, and none of their shoes or clothing wore out. For 40 years out there in the wilderness, nothing of what they had wore out. Their shoes didn't wear out, their clothes didn't wear out, or anything. So Yahweh took care of them out there in the wilderness. Even though they were disobedient, he still took care of them. Why? Because they was his one son. And he took care of that, just like today. No matter what we go through with our problems or whatever we got going on, he's still there for us. He still have mercy. His love is there for us because we are all his offspring. And you could understand that better by having when you have your own kids and how much you love and do for them. Well, it's the same thing with Yahweh. We are his offspring. He made us. I don't care what color our skin is. We still are his offspring.
Saying T, making some noise in there.
If y'all can mute yourself out if you're not talking. I don't know who that was, but go ahead, Ms. Arthur.
Okay, so he took care of them. And like I said, just like now, he taking care of us. Even though we have tribulation and we have things, we can't see our way out of some of these things. But he always make a way for us. And we'll say, now I didn't see that way. Of course not, because we're not Yahweh. We ain't gonna never see it that way. But he got us. He always make a way out for us. And we have to remember that he did it for them. He could do it for us too. And that is what hold me in this teaching, the death, burial, resurrection of my Savior, Yahshua. That's what hold us. And it's all we got to remember when we going through things. That's what I try to remember when I'm going through problems and situations, a death, a burial, and a resurrection. And remember that he brought you through it before, and he would keep bringing you through it. He said, I'll be with you even until the end of the world. So we have to have faith in him and knowing that he gonna be there for us. And sometimes we get a little shaky. you know, but we know deep down in our heart, he's there for us. He's there. And I just wanted to say hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right, Miss Dorothy, thank you for that. Very, very good. All right, who wants to go next?
I will take a stab at it.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me gather my thoughts, cause you know I have my doctor's note. But to give you what I got out of those chapters, I'm gonna go back. Miss Phyllis, you did a beautiful job. I don't know why I'm calling you Miss Phyllis, because we're the same dang on age. But anyway, I loved it. Miss Dorothy, I loved you too. Now, what I got out of reading that is Yahweh's purpose. And that was physically so with the children of Israel. He set Moses up to be their intercessor, to be their savior. And I guess his mother must have not seen that, but she saw that he was a goodly child, goodly meaning divine and beautiful, whatever else. And he went through the things. I'm not going to go back over what he went through and how he did his exodus out of Egypt. But when Yahweh presented himself to Moses, and Miss Phyllis covered all that, but Yahweh said, what the heck did he tell Moses? More or less to show that Moses was chosen of him when he brings the children out of the land of Egypt, that Moses was going to come and serve him up, atop Mount Sinai. And yeah, he set him up as Elohim to Pharaoh in that 7th chapter, and Aaron would be his prophet. And it was set that way. So you got these 10 devastating plagues. The first 3 the children of Israel participated in, and at the 4th plague it was a division between the children of Israel and Egypt, which should have made them think, oh, okay, we got a mighty El. But after that 10th plague, and they exited out of Egypt early in the morning, Joshua was with them, or Elohim was with him. He was that cloud that led them, through the Red Sea, and came behind them and messed with Pharaoh and his men. And also he was a pillar of fire, so they couldn't see them. So he was always protecting him. But he stood Moses up to show them his acts, show the children of Israel his acts through Moses, and Moses knew his ways, because he talked to him face to face as a friend. The children were murmuring constantly. They murmured constantly. They chided Moses. They rebuked him. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm ahead of myself. Because when before they got to the Red Sea, Yahweh told Moses to tell the children of Israel, because they had become discouraged, that you guys didn't know me. They didn't know me by my name. They only knew me as El Shaddai, the Almighty Provider. But by my name, Yahweh, they didn't know me. And I'm going to get you out with a mighty hand. They get through the Red Sea. They sing their song. They're all happy. Hee hee ha ha. Then they get hungry. And this is any man, because we can't say that we would go back. If we were there, we would do something different. No, because we were working with carnal minds. It wasn't nothing spiritual back then. That spirit, that Holy Spirit was in and out. of bodies, as it were. It was in Moses, and it was in several others, but for Yahweh's purpose, Moses was that intercessor or Holy Spirit. So they get out there, they're in the wilderness, they're hungry, you know, they get the manna, they get the quail, then they're thirsty, they get the water, and they're murmuring and they're chiding Moses, being very, I want to say disrespectful, but they're like criticizing him and so forth and so on. But Moses is like, you know, y'all not criticizing me and Aaron. What you're doing is you're disrespecting Yahweh. You're criticizing your creator. That didn't sink in their heads at the time, and it actually never did. But anyway, they get through all those trials and tribulations, what Moses does with the help of his minister, and they get to the Mount of Elohim. But before they get to the Mount of Elohim, he is visited by his father-in-law, Ruel, and his wife and his sons, his two sons. And Ruel's there for a few days, I guess, observing. And he sees this, all the children of Israel all day, all night, coming to Moses with every problem they have. So Ruel gives him some wisdom. And that's Yahweh using Ruel, because the Ruel, Yahweh's telling Moses to, you know, set up judges and whatever else. You can't do all this by yourself. These children will wear you down, you know. The little problems, okay, you appoint judges and so forth and so on for the people to go to. The major issues, they come to you. So Moses hearkened to that. And it was well with them. And then they had Moses had to go up to the mount, and Yahweh told him to tell the people that he was going to speak to them, or not probably get in the cart before the horse. Before that, Yahweh gives Moses some instructions, bring half holes in it like a sieve. And Moses comes down and he tells the people what Yahweh said with us, Yahweh. And the people said everything Yahweh said. We will do. We will obey. So they married him right there. That was that covenant. They married him right there. And of course they broke the covenant. Let me think. Oh, saying do. And then Yahweh tells Moses to tell them to prepare against, you know, the third day, you know, wash up and stay away from your wives, because I'll come down and speak to them. So they did. Miss Dorothy told you what day it was. It was June the 6th, because they got into the wilderness in the third month on the third day, which would have been June 3rd for them. Anyway, Yahweh manifests in this cloud. And this cloud, and we know he's a consuming fire. So you got all this fire and this smoky cloud, if you can imagine that. And the children of Israel trembled. We probably would have went up hands, you know. And you have this booming voice coming out of this fiery, smoky cloud. So they received, I can't think, whatever words that Yahweh spoke to them. And I'm probably getting into another chapter, because, you know, they didn't want Yahweh to speak to him anymore. They wanted Yahweh to speak to Moses, and Moses go back and speak to them. And there's a bunch of gaps. I really didn't write anything down. I got the assignment kind of twisted in my head. I wrote down a lot from 1 to 5, and I'm just pushing that back. But what I got out of those chapters is that Yahweh was, you know, setting them up. setting them up to recognize that they needed a savior, even though he was doing everything for them as El Shaddai, and they didn't appreciate that. And when he gave them his name, you know, and he showed his wonders to them. And, you know, even Ruel said, you know, Yahweh is a mighty Elohim. He's Elohim. He's a greater Elohim than all the deities they have out there. You know, he recognized that and told Moses. But just like us, we have to be, you know, you have to look at the dispensation because they weren't in the spirit then. But they should have been able to see some things, and they were double-minded. They didn't understand. Their understanding was carnal. And when I say carnal, it was just, and they were hard-headed, just like us, hard-headed. You know, you have to understand what their understanding was, because if they knew what was going on, then they probably wouldn't have done some of the things they done. I'm going off to some kind of lecture, and I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I mean, because Yahweh showed me some things in the last few days, and you know, the things that I listened to. I'm basically, like I told you, Carla, I'm always, all my life, I've come up from behind. So I'm just now, well, not just now, but in the last few years or so, getting a knowledge and an understanding, or being taught something, because I had to go to the founder. I had to go to the, you know, read the transcripts. And I thank Yahshua for you for even having these structured classes, you know, because like I was saying, that they're gonna miss or something else, and people think they don't give you the teaching as it was handed down. They're not following that pattern. They're not following the pattern, and they're going off of their own understanding, you know. And you come in, I didn't grow up in the church world, and I wasn't a Bible reader. So you have a clean slate here. I don't know what's in the Bible. I'm learning now. And I'm learning how to read it, and I know how to read it now. I didn't know the Exodus was before the Genesis. Really? And that there were actually two Exodus before the Genesis. I didn't know any of that. And I did not know that everything in those scriptures points out Yahweh will be salvation through Yahshua, you know. You know, those two mysteries as that superincorporeal being that can be seen only in divine visions and revelations, and then manifesting in the flesh and walking amongst his people, not just one time, but several times. You know, walking among and getting a feel for what's going on. You know, and that he, girl, I don't want to get started, but I don't want to get started. I am grateful, and I understand when you say you are Yahweh. You are. He's the ultimate source, substance, limits, and bounds of everything. You're made of his substance, not in totality, in part. You come from pure spirit. You're going back to pure spirit, because flesh and blood is not going to inherit the kingdom. It's not. So you can't think flesh and blood. You have to be quickened, because Yahshua is no longer in the flesh. He's a quickening spirit. So your holy place, your most holy place, has to be quickened. And you have to understand where you are, what you are. that mystery is going to deny whatever was said. Whatever was said, they didn't do it. I didn't say that. You surely will not die.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to put it like that, but that's what I've encountered in the past 10 years. The first 5 years, I was asleep, due to medication and whatever else. But when I woke up, when I came back to Janet, I said, some of you gonna hate me, for real, because
Mm-hmm.
telling me we're a school, then I expect certain things from a school.
Right.
I expect to be taught. I can't get anything because you have it. My soul's not going to be saved by what you know. And I will go wherever I need to go to get what I need to get.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not like you don't know the truth or you don't know how to run a train of thought. And that's what I need to learn, how to run a train of thought, because I'll go around and grab my Susie Bond just like I did. But you have to teach people how to run a train of thought. You have to teach people how to study, what to study. And you have to, it's a pattern. It is a pattern. It's a pattern. The way this gospel is taught, it's a pattern. It's the truth. Joshua's the truth, that's going to lead you to the Father.
Right.
And you're going to always have to go through him because that's the way Yahweh set it up.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not putting Yahweh out the way, and you're not putting Joshua out the way.
That's right.
People have these things. You have Yahweh as a Trinity. If you think about it,
Yes.
you have him as a Trinity because you have them divided. That is one spirit manifesting in different manifestations. That is the same. He doesn't change. He will never change. And what he says, what comes out of his mouth, like he told Moses to tell Pharaoh, look, you don't let him go, I'm going to kill your son, even your firstborn. And he did it in that 10th devastating plague. Yahweh don't change.
That's right.
He's not going to change. And if you don't understand that you are Yahweh, you're made up of his stuff. You're not Fido. Fido doesn't have intelligence, knowledge, wisdom. Doesn't have beauty, love, and understanding. And I know I'm mixing them up. He doesn't have, power, strength, and foundation. Fido don't have that, but we have that in part. We have some of his 9 divine attributes. Of course, there are more, but we have that. And we can be made aware of that. And it's a way that you go, and I keep going back to it's a pattern to everything. It's one pattern. And you take that pattern and you put it on the teaching, you put it on your life, I'm sorry, I gotta stop. I gotta stop, Lord. I gotta stop. I gotta stop. I'm done for real. I'm muting myself out. Thank you for listening to me ramble and rant and rave.
No, it was beautiful.
That was
Hallelujah.
beautiful.
It was. Hallelujah. All right. Who wants to go next?
I think I want to go next. Get us a shot.
Yay. Okay.
Yay. Okay. So I want to start. Well, we're going to start from the beginning. Exodus, our first chapter. That was the beginning of the setting up of the 12 tribes of Israel. And the children going down into Egypt and having to work really hard, really rigorous. And that was really harsh and extremely severe work that they had to endure. Then we go to the second chapter, Moses, where Moses was born, put in the water, raised up in Pharaoh's daughter's house. He killed a man, fled to Midian. He met his wife, his 2 sons. Yahweh remembered the cries. No, he remembered the covenant that he made with Abraham. I'm sorry, let me slow down. Of course, I'm so nervous, but I'm going to slow it down, Yahshua willing, and we're going to get through it. Okay, so Yahweh remembered the covenant that he made with Abraham. So he heard their cries, and let's see. So then he came to Moses in the bush, which was a vision that Moses was seeing. And he told Moses, Aya Asha Aya, tell the children of Israel, I sent you. Yahweh gave Moses the signs, and Aaron was going to go with him and be his spokesperson. Yahweh sent Moses and Aaron to Pharaoh to tell him to let Israel go. And 6th chapter, what I got from the 6th chapter, what I guess I kind of just condensed it, and I have the Levites and Moses and Aaron's generation. Moses was 80, Aaron was 83. I guess I learned that a score is 20. So Moses was 80 years old. And so the 8th chapter. No, I don't want to go skip today. So the river was blood. So they turned the river into blood. He gave them the signs. The river was blood for 7 days. There was dead fish in the river, and the river stunk. And Yahweh separated Israel from the Egyptians. And then we began with the plagues. The first sign of the first plague was water again. He turned the water into blood, and it stunk. The frogs, it was heaps of frogs, and they stunk. Then the lice, which was the dust of the land, the swarms of flies, the cattle died, but not one of Israel's died. The boils came forth from ash of the furnace, which was dust, likened unto dust. Grievous hail, the locusts. Let's see. And Yahweh told Moses, speak into the ears of the people of Israel, and told them about the death decree and the Passover, and setting up the time with them, smiting the firstborn and putting the blood over the door, and they had to stay in their homes. Yahweh told them by a mighty hand they were brought forth. They had to have unleavened. I believe that's because Yahshua hadn't risen. So it was unleavened for 7 days. Mm-hmm. And Moses stretched his hand over the sea, and Yahweh caused a strong east wind, and Israel went through on dry ground. And Israel even seen the Egyptians dead in the sea, and they feared Yahweh. And Moses and the children of Israel sang a song, glorious, and praised Yahweh. They took their journey through the wilderness, and they began to murmur against Moses and Aaron. And they asked him, did they bring them here to die? And Yahweh knew that they were murmuring, and he wasn't pleased with their murmurs. They didn't know that they were murmuring against Yahweh. They thought they were murmuring against Aaron and Moses, but that was against Yahweh, and he wasn't pleased with the murmuring. So he caused it to rain down manna. And like what was so beautiful to me was the manna was as water made with honey. I'm like, ooh. I did a Miranda like, oh, how can I taste that? Water and honey. But yeah, I really love that part. So then they journeyed more. They went on another journey to Rafin, I believe. So they journeyed from the wilderness of sin to Rafin. You might got to help me with that. Rafin, and Rafidin, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And there was no water there, so they murmured more. So Yahweh told Moses to take the elders and the rod that he had smite the river with, and go upon the rock of Horad and smite that rock, and water came forth, and they had their water. And that is kind of my book report, but some things that I did remember was I believe Moses told Joshua to go and fight with the Amalek, and Moses's arms were heavy, and they held up his arms. Aaron and her. Yeah, okay, that wasn't in my book report, but okay, I had just remembered that, so I wanted to say that. And so 18th chapter, I think we're at the 18th now. Hopefully, okay, and so that's when Moses went back and he told his father-in-law everything that Yahweh had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians, and his father-in-law said, now I know that Yahweh is greater than all. And so Moses was sitting by the water, and his father-in-law seen that he was worrying about things or had things on his mind, and he helped him. Like the sister before said, he gave him some wisdom and told him how to do it. We're going to let Elohim judge, We're going to let Elohim help you out, Moses. Okay, and so then, yeah, this is a lot, but okay. The third month, Joshua told them told Moses, Yahweh called unto Moses and said, tell the children of Israel, ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bear you on eagle wings and brought you unto myself. Yeah, brought you unto myself. That was like, yeah, he brought them into himself. And so that was just beautiful how he just brings us into him. And what's my next? And if they listen to his voice, they'll be a peculiar people. And let's see. He told them to let them wash, and they had to start preparing. So he told them to wash their clothes, go get cleaned up. Because y'all gonna come into that mount. I feel like I'm here right now. And so he came to the mount, and it was this dark smoke, and I know that they were that had to be a phenomenal sight to see. So yeah, they're at the mount, and they were scared, and they heard the thunder, and they heard the lightning, and the voice was just they heard it. And so they couldn't touch the mount. They told them, do not touch the mount or you will surely die. As quick as you touched it, you'll be stoned. And I think I'm going to stop right there because I don't know how far I went.
Very good, darling.
Thank you.
See?
I know you guys can come back and help me. Thank you.
No, you did really good. Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
Who wants to go next?
I will.
Okay.
Okay, first I want to say that I have enjoyed the previous speakers, and it is amazing at how Yahweh lead and guide us through the things that we have to go through. And this has been a real experience to go the way that we have been going, to take these books chapter by chapter and read it and see what Yahweh will reveal. And in doing so, you find out as one speaker said, that she didn't know Exodus was actually the first book of the Bible. And I think if we are all honest, we'll all say that we didn't know that until it was revealed to us, because you got Genesis being the first book of the Bible. But in order for you to understand, when Yahweh said that he gave Moses a vision, in order for us to come to it, then we have to look at it just like that. Because when you see and understand that Yahweh did give Moses a vision and he started out with him, then everything that we read, the first 5 books of those Bibles, that's based on the vision that Moses was given. So when you see Yahweh made that promise to Abraham, Moses didn't see that until after Yahweh had called him up into the mount and revealed those things to him. So even Moses is looking at his own birth. Moses is looking at when Pharaoh sent out the death decree. Moses is seeing all of those things come to pass. And that's how we understand through vision and revelation. Let me put it that way. Because when Moses killed that Egyptian and fled for his life and went to the mountain, and Yahweh revealed himself unto him, he told him that Israel would come out of Egypt by a mighty hand. Yahweh was talking about himself. Now, mind you, Egypt had plenty gods in the land. And in one of the workshops that we had here in Meridian, it was gotten into one night that how that all of those plagues were representing the different gods that was manifested in the land of Egypt. So when Yahweh appeared unto Moses in the form of a burning bush and called Moses by name, and he told Moses, he said, this shall be a token unto you, that when you shall have delivered Israel up out of the land of Egypt. He didn't say if you deliver them. He didn't say if none of that. He said when. So it was a definite that Israel was coming up out of the land of Egypt. Now he had promised Abraham that he would deliver them up out of that land. So now here Yahweh is making good on that promise. So Moses, knowing of all the gods in the land of Egypt, asked Yahweh for a name. You got to have something to distinguish Yahweh from that they were used to. Even in our lifetime here, Yahweh is showing us that it does not matter how smart we thought we were in the world. That wisdom has nothing to do with our eternal life. So he gives Moses his name, and he tells him that that was his name forever and a memorial unto all generations. Moses began to make up excuses. I can't speak plain. I killed a man. Yahweh got rid of all of Moses' excuses, as he has gotten rid of all of our excuses now. Now, a question was asked earlier in one of these sessions about why is it that sometimes the rod that Moses had in his hand was referred to as the rod of Moses, the rod of Elohim, and the rod of Aaron. Yahweh was showing me how that if you are preaching the unadulterated gospel, it does not matter what body that truth comes through, because we know that that rod represented the truth. So it doesn't matter what body is teaching you or showing you the truth. Yahweh is the one that's giving the revelations, and the truth does not change. It's not going to fit because you say I'm of this one, and that's what he was talking about with Paul when he say, one would say I am of Apollos, I of Saul, but did either one of them die for you? So then with Moses and them, and when they made reference to the rod of Moses, the rod of Elohim, the rod of Aaron, it was the same rod that they was using. So when it was manifesting what was taking place, when they turned the water into blood, when they just held up the hands and the dust came about, that was Yahweh doing all of it. So then you see Moses was charged with going back into Egypt to tell Pharaoh to let Yahweh's son go. Yahweh sent Aaron out to meet them. And the two of them with the rod went back down into the land of Egypt, told Pharaoh what thus saith Yahweh. They met with the elders of Israel. They went unto Pharaoh, but still Yahweh was doing just what he said that he was going to do when he made that promise unto Abraham. I am going to deliver my son up out of the land of Egypt. And that's what he was demonstrating to Moses and to Aaron and Israel, and even Pharaoh saw it. So then when you start preaching the truth and you're out there preaching to the so-called friends and family and all of them, look, just like Pharaoh had the truth shown and told to him and he could not accept it, then we shouldn't be surprised when that's happening down here in this day and time. But the bottom line is Yahweh is going to make good on his promise. He promised Abraham he was going to bring him out. Yahweh brought him out. Now they went through 10 devastating plagues. They had to take a lamb. They had to examine that lamb. They had to hold that lamb over, and then they had to slay him. They had to put the blood on the top of the doorpost, the two sides, and dip him from a basin, giving you 4 points of blood. Yahweh is establishing a pattern here. So then when they did the things that Yahweh told them, now Israel had to eat that lamb. They had to eat it in their house. There could nothing be left over. That's what we're doing now, because this truth that we're taking on, or that we are actually digesting, is that lamb. That's what we're doing now. We're partaking of the true lamb, which is Yahshua the Messiah, and he is the truth. So then with Israel, they had to, all of those that did not have the blood, like Yahweh had told them, then the death angel went through. But don't you know Israel had the blood? It was the Egyptians or those that were left out that didn't have the blood. So when Yahweh caused that death angel to go through, the firstborn of male and beast of the Egyptians were slain. But Israel, Yahweh had told them, spare the Egyptians. You tell your women to have the kneading boards on their backs, shoes on their feet, because you're coming out in haste. It ain't gonna be no Amaleking around. You can't be lagging behind. When Yahweh tells you to move, you got to move. And he showed that with Israel, because he was a cloud by day to them, and he was a pillar of fire by night, so that Israel were never in darkness. And that's where we are right now. Once you take on the Messiah, then you are never in darkness. Why? Because he is righteousness, redemption, and sanctification. And once you take on that new man, then you're not in darkness anymore. So Israel is on their way out. They got warring nations on either side of them. They got the Red Sea in front of them, and they look back and they see Pharaoh. Well, then they start murmuring unto Moses. And they told Moses, why did you bring us out here for us to die? Weren't we better off down in the land of Egypt? But now when you read on over in about the 15th, 16th chapter in there, they said that they knew that it was Yahweh that had brought them up by a mighty hand. So what happened to that faith that they had, that it was Yahweh that had brought them up out of the land of Egypt? Look, you can come up on trials and tribulations, and they will cause you to start looking back or looking down. But Yahweh said he was bringing them out by a mighty hand. So you have to have that faith in Yahweh to know beyond a shadow of a doubt he's going to do just what he said he was going to do. So now what did he do? That same rod that Moses had in his hand, he told him to hold it up over that Red Sea. Now Yahweh caused that Red Sea to stand up on a heap. He caused the east wind to blow that ground dry so that Israel could go through. They weren't sloshing through in no mud or none of that. But then you see that at a point, when they get on over into the wilderness, Yahweh calls Moses up into the mount. And he told him, you tell Israel to clean up, and in 3 days, I'm going to speak to them. But now Yahweh came down as a dark, thick cloud. He told them that they could not touch that mount, for if they did, they would be stoned or thrust through with a dart. So then I used to sow. Now, where I'm going with this is when Yahweh told Moses, Ayah, Asher, Ayah, I will be what I will to be. So now here he is. He's bringing Israel up out of the land of Egypt, and he is showing them that he will be what he will to be. Because with this, when he came down in that thick cloud, he told Moses, you see, I have spoke to you from heaven. So wherever the presence of Yahweh was, that was heaven. Now, I brought the fact up about sewing because the other night I was sitting up trying to find some fabric. I wanted some upholstery fabric. And so I started going on, I went online and I started looking. In the process of it, they had the thing on there about you can buy a bolt of fabric. Yahweh took that very bolt of fabric and he just made it so plain because, as one of the speakers said earlier, about understanding that everything is Yahweh. You can't be nothing else if everything came from that pure spirit state. So with that bolt of fabric in my head, I sat there and I cut out a dress, a blouse, a pair of pants, a jacket. I did all of that from that one bolt of fabric. But that jacket wasn't going to be called a bolt of fabric. That dress was not going to be called a bolt of fabric, because once it was put into the form that it was supposed to be, then that's what it was called, even though it originated from that bolt of fabric. So Yahweh, even the little simple things that we look at in our lives, Yahweh is right there to show us of himself. But now dealing with Israel out here, when they began to murmur against Moses and against Aaron and said, well, you take too much upon yourself. Look, Yahweh said this to Moses. They are murmuring against me. They weren't murmuring against Moses. They weren't murmuring against Aaron. And Yahweh told Moses that he heard them murmuring. Where was Yahweh when he was listening to them murmur against Moses and Aaron? He was right there in the form of, in that body called Oshia. He was there. He never left them. As Yahweh never leave us. It's just a matter of us opening our eyes to see that it is Yahweh that is leading and guiding us. All you got to do is just trust him, believe him. And that was the thing that Israel was coming to know, because even Ruel, when Moses was telling them, when Ruel took Moses' wife and sons back to him, and Moses began to tell him of all of the things that Yahweh had done, Ruel said, I know that it is Yahweh that have done these things for you. And Ruel offered up sacrifices unto Yahweh. Even with Israel, when they began, Yahweh told them that when they was going to set up those stones, that if they put a tool against it, that it would be polluted at that point. You can't mix nothing with Yahweh. Yahweh is all in all, and that's all. So then you see that when Moses was out there and they were fighting against the Amalekites, and when Moses' arms grew tired, you had Aaron and Hur, one on either side of him, to hold Moses' arms up. And Moses, it said Moses sat on a stone or on a rock. What are you talking about? That was the law and the prophets, and it was based on that rock, which is Yahshua the Messiah. When Yahweh tell us to the law and to the testimony, then that's what we have to do, because that's where he laid down his entire purpose and plan. And it's going to take him to take us back there and show us that he did do those things. That's why when the Messiah came in, he said he came in to fulfill those things that were written of him that were back there in the law and in the prophets. When Yahweh said that this is tight, it is tight. But the thing was to get Israel on over into Canaan's land, because that was the land that Yahweh had promised to Abraham and his seed. I'm gonna cut it out right there.
Okay. Hallelujah. Sis. All right. I know you punching your fist and everything. I can hear all that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hallelujah. It's okay. It's okay. All right. Next speaker. Who wants to go next? Between Mike, Shirley, and Miranda.
I'll go next.
Okay. You got it. Go on, Mike. You
Okay.
go on, Mike. I can wait. Go ahead.
All right, I'm just bringing the baby in here to the office with it real quick.
Okay. Thank you. Hey. Okay. Thank you. Hey.
All right. Sorry about that. Y'all can hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we hear you, Mike. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes, we hear you.
All right. So I'll just go ahead and read. I just typed mine up. The book of Exodus picks up with the 70 migrating down to Egypt due to the famine. Moses was born under a death decree, and by the will of Yahweh was raised up in Pharaoh's daughter's house because of some events Yahweh had planned out. When Moses is 40 years old, he gets into a situation which he had killed an Egyptian in defense of his brethren and had to flee because Pharaoh sought to take his life. When Moses fled to Midian, he ran into 7 daughters of the priests of Midian at the well and later married the eldest of them. They had children together, and after 40 years passed, while Moses was tending to his father-in-law's sheep, he had a vision of a burning bush. This is where Yahweh introduces himself to Moses, and for the first time reveals his name and sends him down to Egypt to free his people and deliver them to the land he promised. With Moses back in Egypt, Yahweh devastates Egypt and with 10 devastating plagues while hardening Pharaoh's heart. It concluded with Pharaoh finally agreeing to let his people go. After the children left Egypt, Pharaoh's heart was hardened for the final time, and he pursued them where Yahweh destroyed Pharaoh and his host in the sea. Israel was delivered through the divided waters of the Red Sea and followed that cloud that led them into the wilderness, which leads us into where we are currently. But before I discuss the assigned chapters, allow me to digress to express some principles that were revealed in the chapters leading up to where we are now. Let's begin with Moses' birth and how he was born under a death decree, which Yahshua fulfills by being born under a death decree as well. Moses was hid 3 months, and after his mother couldn't hide him any longer, she made an ark and put him in it by the flags of the river, where Pharaoh's daughter found him and took him in. There's a blood, water, spirit principle, which are Yahshua's witnesses within this. Blood being that Moses was born under the death decree, he was placed in the flags by the river, water, and Moses being a goodly child, had the Holy Spirit, as Dr. Kinley had taught, which points to the Spirit. Also, Yahweh made Pharaoh's daughter have compassion on him, which is Spirit. Lastly, Moses was raised in her house 40 years. There's also a death, burial, resurrection with Moses being born under the death decree, death, which Moses being hid, burial for 3 months. He was hid for 3 months and resurrecting because he was supposed to be killed due to the death decree, but Pharaoh's daughter had compassion, which is resurrection. This is all testifying to Yahshua's death, burial, resurrection. Just as Yahshua, after his death, was 3 days buried in the earth, Moses was 3 months in hiding or buried from the death decree. Also, there was a death, burial, resurrection when Moses killed the Egyptian. buried him in the sand, and left Egypt because he was a dead man if he had stayed. But he fled and resurrected in the land of Midian. When he arrived in Midian, he found 7 daughters by the well trying to water their flock. This points to Joshua fulfilling how he met the woman at the well with 7 husbands. Moses eventually married Zipporah and became a shepherd to his father-in-law's sheep. This is pointing to Joshua being the true shepherd, taking care of his father's sheep. After 40 years in Midian, Yahweh gives Moses a vision and tells him to remove his shoes which bears the sole of his feet, likened unto us having to bear our soul before Yahweh, because he was standing on holy ground. I should note that Yahweh manifested as Joshua, the son of Nun, and appeared in Egypt 10 years after Moses' departure, and astro projected himself to appear to Moses in a vision at the burning bush. This explains why Yahweh told Moses, I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and further explains why he told Moses to come to Egypt, because he was already there physically. Additionally, he told Moses that he certainly will be with him, so we can truly see that Yahshua is truly the author and finisher of our faith, as it states in Hebrews, the 12th chapter. So Moses goes down to Egypt, and Yahweh wages war on Pharaoh and the gods of Egypt through the plagues and utterly destroys Egypt. This is pointing to how Yahshua is the true deliverer, and we being spiritually and psychologically are delivered from the world, which is Egypt, within us. Prior to Israel's departure, they were instructed to take a lamb, inspecting it thoroughly, without spot and blemish, and kill it, and to put the blood on the door, and the death angel would pass over their dwelling and not kill the firstborn in the household. This beautifully points to how Yahshua was interrogated, which is thoroughly inspected by Pontius Pilate, whom found no fault, which means no blemishes or no spots or no sin with him. Now, then Yahshua was hung on a cross with 4 points of blood, likened unto the lamb, during the Passover, having 4 points of blood on the door. Yahshua said, I am the door. So, the children of Israel finally being released by Pharaoh and his hosts, hot on their tail, Yahweh instructed them to stand and see the salvation of Yahweh, and he miraculously divided the waters of the Red Sea and allowed them to walk on dry ground. Pharaoh, trying to pursue after them, was destroyed along with his hosts. This is pointing to Israel having the lamb in them and allowed to enter the doorway made for them in the sea. Pharaoh, not having the lamb in him, tried to enter and was handled as a thief and robber and died as such. There are even more principles in there, but I just wanted to discuss a few of those to show how the law and the prophets truly are testifying to Yahshua the Messiah. Yahweh has truly revealed his son through the law and the prophets, and it is Yahshua who now reveals the Father to us. Now that we are brought up to where we are currently, let's begin with the children of Israel in the wilderness and how they started to murmur against Moses and Yahweh. The Israelites became hungry and complained, which prompted Yahweh to rain down manna from heaven and gather it 6 days. And on the 6th day, gather a double portion to use on the 7th day. This beautifully points to Yahshua, the Messiah, going to be baptized of John the Baptist and having the Holy Spirit descend upon him, pointing to a double portion. In like manner, we are born being animated by the Spirit of Yahweh. And when we receive the Holy Spirit, it's likened unto us receiving the double portion. This all beautifully correlates to Elisha receiving the double portion from Elijah. Thereafter, during the children of Israel journeying, they didn't have any water, and Yahweh instructed Moses to smite the rocks so it could bring forth water. Yahshua, being the true rock, is a spring of living water, and Israel had to smite him in fulfillment of the scriptures. Afterwards, the Israelites fought against Amalek, and during the battle, Moses was holding up his hand, and Israel would prevail if he let his hands, as long as he had his hands up, they would prevail. And if he let his hands down, Amalek would prevail. So Aaron and Hur set a stone under Moses, and they held up his hands so that his hands were steady. And Israel prevailed as the sun went down, and Yahshua the son of Nun discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. This pointing to Yahshua being the rock, our foundation, He was that rock that went with them. Aaron and Hur pointed to the law and the prophets. So thereafter, Moses was ruling this people by himself, and Reuel advised Moses to appoint leaders over the people to assist him so he won't get worn out. Moses listens to his father-in-law and appoints leaders to judge the smaller matters, and the big matters will be brought to Moses for judgment. Soon thereafter, in the 3rd month, Moses and the Israelites arrived and encamped around Mount Sinai. Yahweh instructed Moses to have the Israelites clean up for 3 days and present themselves before Yahweh. Now, it just so happens that this day fell on June 6th, which is an important date in history where Yahshua would years later pour out the Holy Spirit after his death, burial, resurrection, and ascension. So the children of Israel present themselves before Yahweh in the mount, is smoking and on fire because the cloud they had been following sat on the mount, became a pillar of fire. Yahweh spoke the commandments from the mount, and the ground was shaken and the people were filled with fear. This resulted in the children of Israel asking Moses to speak on Yahweh's behalf, lest they die. So I wanted to, that's all I had. And I wanted to kind of finish that off just right, but I ran out of time. So that's what I got.
That's all.
All right. You come get this, baby. Very good. Who wants to go next? And for those of you that joined a little late, okay. For those of you that joined a little bit late, what we're doing, the class is given an assignment to read Exodus 16 through 20 for last week, but we've gone from Exodus 1st chapter over to the 20th chapter. And so whoever's participating there, what they're doing, they're kind of giving a summary and principles that Yahweh has shown them throughout those scriptures, 16 and 20, and then kind of summarizing up to that point. All right, go ahead, Miranda.
Okay. And mine is typed up too, but what I did was, like Phyllis was saying, that she asked Yahweh to show her how to do remember the sons. I did the same thing with this, asked Yahweh to show me how to condense this. And he woke me up the other morning, maybe Tuesday morning before day, and this is what I have. It's a little winded, but it is, none can deliver out of his hand. And 70 souls journeyed into Egypt, and by his word they did stand. The sons of Israel, as he promised Abraham, and none could deliver out of his hand. Then Joseph died and all his brethren, and there arose a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph, but none could deliver out of his hand. And the children were fruitful and multiplied. Then the Egyptians evil entreated them, but the more they were afflicted, the more they multiplied, but none could deliver out of his hand. Pharaoh moved with envy to kill the son from 2 down to birth. Now Moses was born and hid for 3 months, and none could deliver out of his hand. Now Shiphrah and Puah feared Elohim, and Yahweh blessed their house for their obedience, and none could deliver out of his hand. So Pharaoh sent his own to do his bidding, to kill the sons of Israel from 2 to birth, but none could deliver out of his hand. Then a man of Levi took a wife of Levi to wife, took a woman of Levi to wife, and a son was born to the man and wife. He had 3 months, but could no longer bear, but none could deliver out of his hand. An ark of bulrushes pitched and daubed within and out. In the river's brinks he was placed, but none could deliver out of his hand. Then Pharaoh's daughter had compassion and took him in, taken back to his mother to be weaned, for none could deliver out of his hand. Given the name of Moses by Pharaoh's daughter, raising Pharaoh's daughter's house 40 years, but none could deliver out of his hand. The desire came to be out among his brethren. He defended his brother and buried the Egyptian in the sand, but none could deliver out of his hand. Now his brother rose up the next day, but Moses thought he would understand. So he fled to the land of Midian, encountered 7 women at a well, but none could deliver out of his hand. He watered their flock, and they got home early. Their father inquired of their earliness home, for none could deliver out of his hand. An Egyptian helped us helped us, so their father Ruel was told. But as they broke bread, it was discovered that Moses was not an Egyptian, as was supposed, for none could deliver out of his hand. Now Ruel gave Zipporah to Moses to wife. A son was born named Gershom, for I have been a stranger in a strange land, for none could deliver out of his hand. Now there came a day on the backside of Midian where Moses saw a phenomenal sight, for none could deliver out of his hand. And Moses turned aside to see the great sight, a bush burning, not being consumed, for none could deliver out of his hand. Now Yahweh Elohim called, saying, Moses, Moses, and he answered, Here I am, for none could deliver out of his hand. I have chosen thee to deliver my children out of Egypt, out of their afflictions, and that by a mighty hand, for none can deliver out of his hand. And Moses asked, Who am I that I should deliver the children? And Yahweh said, Certainly I will be with thee, for none can deliver out of his hand. Moses asked for a name, and Yahweh replied, Ayah Asher Ayah, and demonstrated his power, for none can deliver out of his hand. And the angel of Yahweh spoke further, Yahweh, the Elohim of thy fathers, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and none can deliver out of his hand. 3 signs he gave: a rod turned to a serpent, a hand changed leprous, and water poured on dry ground, changing to blood, for none can deliver out of his hand. Gather my people and give them my word, then go to Pharaoh and say, Let my people go, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now Moses complained of not being eloquent of speech. Is not Aaron the Levi your brother? For he cometh to meet thee, for none can deliver out of his hand. So the brothers met in the wilderness and embraced with a kiss, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh to speak what Yahweh Elohim had said, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now Pharaoh spoke true and said, I don't know Yahweh, neither will I let them go. But little did he know that, for none can deliver out of his hand. For Pharaoh said, You make the people be idle, take away their straw, and don't diminish a brick, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now Yahweh said, You will see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with anguish of spirit and for cruel bondage placed on Israel. But they did know that none can deliver out of his hand. Now Yahweh, by the hand of Moses, poured out 10 devastating plagues, his armies as he called them indeed. And afterwards Pharaoh and his host will know that none can deliver out of his hand. A plague of water changed into blood in all vessels, all pots, and the magicians matched. But Pharaoh called for Moses to remove the plague, for none can deliver out of his hand. A plague of frogs on all the land, in beds and houses. Pharaoh's magicians did so too. But Pharaoh called for Moses to remove the plague, for none can deliver out of his hand. A plague of lice on all the land, in beds and houses, and all the people. And Pharaoh's magicians did so too. But Pharaoh called for Moses to remove the plague, for none can deliver out of his hand. A plague of insects in beds and house, and all the people. And Yahweh made a difference between Israel and the Egyptians. But Pharaoh called for Moses to remove the plague, for none can deliver out of his hand. A plague on the cattle, a great murrain, but only on the Egyptians' cattle. Now Yahweh severed between the houses of the Israelites. But Pharaoh called for Moses to remove the plague, for none can deliver out of his hand. A plague of boils on all flesh of the Egyptians. For Yahweh spared the household of the Israelites. But Pharaoh called for Moses to remove the plague, for none can deliver out of his hand. A plague of hail mixed with fire, very grievous indeed. For Yahweh spared the household of the Israelites. But Pharaoh called for Moses to remove the plague, for none can deliver out of his hand. A plague of locusts that ate up the residue, for Yahweh spared the household of the Israelites. But Pharaoh called for Moses to remove the plague, for none can deliver out of his hand. A plague of darkness on the Egyptians that could be felt, for Yahweh provided light in Goshen where the Israelites dwelt. But Pharaoh called for Moses to remove the plague, for none can deliver out his hand. For before the plague, Israel was told to demand jewels of silver and jewels of gold. For Yahweh gave them favor in the sight of the Egyptians, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now a plague of death on the firstborn of man and beast in Egypt was declared by the mouth of Yahweh, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now Pharaoh's son was caught up in this plague, and there was a great cry, as Yahweh had said, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now the feast of unleavened bread was established, no leaven in households of Israel from Abib 1st through the 7th. Now this was given to Israel and Israel alone, for none can deliver out of his hand. Israel was instructed to take out a lamb without spot or blemish on April the 10th through the 14th and bleed the lamb, blood dipped from a basin placed on 2 side posts and top of the doorposts, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now all that had the blood on the inside of their door, the death angel passed over, but in Egypt there was a great cry, for in every household was one dead, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now there was a great cry in the land of Egypt, but not one was dead of the Israelites, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now Pharaoh rose up by night and called for Moses and Aaron and said, Go, serve Yahweh as ye have said, and bless me also, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now the people of Israel, 6,000 footmen, not counting women and children, a great mixed multitude departed Egypt with their herds, their cattle, their flocks, for none can deliver out of his hand. For the sojourning of Israel was 430 years in Egypt. Even the self-same day it came to pass that all the hosts of Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt, for none can deliver out of his hand. For every man's servant brought with money had to be circumcised to travel with Israel, for this is the ordinance of the Passover, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now Moses said to the people, Remember this day, for by strength of hand has Yahweh brought you out of Egypt, for none can deliver out of his hand. No leaven shall be found in thy house for 7 days, no, not even in thy quarters. It shall be a sign upon thy head between thine eyes, for none can deliver out of his hand. For Yahweh went before them by day as a pillar of a cloud, and by night as a pillar of fire. He took it not away, for none can deliver out of his hand. Then Israel encamped at Pi-hahiroth between Migdol and the sea, so that Pharaoh would say, They are entangled in the land, and Yahweh hardened Pharaoh's heart, for none can deliver out of his hand. So Pharaoh and his hosts pursued after Israel, 600 chariots, 600 horses, and 600 horsemen. And the children of Israel cried unto Moses, but none can deliver out of his hand. Now Moses said unto the children of Israel, Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of Yahweh, for Yahweh will fight for you. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will see no more forever, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now the pillar of the cloud stood between Israel and the Egyptians, light unto Israel, darkness to the Egyptians, for none can deliver out of his hand. For Yahweh would get honor upon Pharaoh and his host. Now Yahweh asked Moses, what's that in your hand? A rod. Now Moses raised a rod, and the Red Sea parted on either side. And Israel went through the Red Sea on dry ground, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now the Egyptians pursued Israel, but Yahweh took off their chariot wheels, drave them into the sea, and Moses raised the rod, and the waters came down upon the Egyptians, for none can deliver out of his hand. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel a song unto Yahweh, for he had triumphed over our enemy, Pharaoh and his horsemen drowned in the sea. For they declared, who is like unto thee, O Yah? Who is like thee? Thou stretchest out thy right hand, the earth swallowed them. Yahweh will reign forever, for none can deliver out of his hand. Miriam and all the women took their tambourines, they danced and sang, for he was triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath Yahweh drowned in the sea, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now the children of Israel came to Moriah, where the water was bitter, and the children of Israel murmured against Moses. And Yahweh showed Moses a tree which he cast into the water for sweetness, for none can deliver out of his hand. Yahweh proved Israel and said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to my voice, and wilt do that which is right, and give ear to my commandments, he would not put the diseases upon them which he put on Egypt, for none can deliver out of his hand. The children of Israel journeyed to the wilderness of Sin, and the whole congregation murmured against Moses and Aaron, for they complained that Moses brought them to the wilderness to die, but none can deliver out of his hand. Now Yahweh heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Moses told the children of Israel Moses told the children, Yahweh will provide bread, but they didn't know what it was. For the morning flesh quail at night. Israel was together for 5 days, enough for that day, but a double portion on the 6th day, as none were provided on the 7th, but none could deliver out of his hand. Examples were made as some gathered more and tried to hold over, but as Yahweh said, it bred worms and stank. Some didn't gather double portions on the 6th day, but none was provided on the 7th day. For no man was to go from his place on the 7th day, for none can deliver out of his hand. Moses and Aaron had to fill a pot of an omer of manna. This was to be a testament, for the manner 40 years they had came to the border of their inheritance, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now the children of Israel came to Rephidim, where there was no water. The people complained, give us water to drink. Moses was told to smite the rock and in Hebron, and Yahweh provided water in Massa because of the contending of the children of Israel, for none can deliver out of his hand. Then came Amalek and fought against Israel. Now Moses told Joshua, choose us out men to fight against Amalek. And Moses said he would stand on the top of the hill with the rod of Elohim. Now when Moses held his hand up, Israel prevailed, but when he held his hands down, Amalek prevailed. But a great stone was placed on for him to sit on, and Aaron and Hur held his hands up. Then Israel prevailed. Now Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the sword, for none can deliver out of his hand. And Moses built an altar and called the name of the place Yahweh Nasa, for Yahweh our banner, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now Reuel brought Moses' wife and sons to him, for Moses went out to meet and give obedience. For they asked of each other's affairs. Now Moses told Ruel of all that Yahweh had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians, for none can deliver out of his hand. Now Moses sat to judge the people from morning to evening. When his father-in-law saw this, he asked, "Why did the people come?" And Moses said, "To inquire of Elohim." Now Ruel said unto Moses, "This thing that thou doest is not good. Hearken unto my voice. Choose out able men, such as fear Elohim, men of truth, and make them rulers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, and any harder matter that they can't judge to bring to Moses, for none can deliver out of his hand." Now Moses hearkened to his father-in-law, and chose out men that fear Elohim, and made them rulers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and over tens, and harder matters were brought to Moses, for none can deliver out of his hand. In the 3rd month, in the self same day, Israel came to the wilderness of Sinai, June the 3rd. Yahweh called Moses up and said to him, "Israel, who who have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I brought you out unto myself. If you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be a peculiar treasure to me, for the earth is mine." Now the people said, "All that Yahweh has spoken, we will do, but none can deliver out of his hand." So the people were sanctified that same day, for on the morrow they were to wash their clothes and be ready against the 3rd day. For bounds were set for the people, that they could not go up and touch the mount, for whatsoever touched the mount will be stoned. Now on the 3rd day there was thunders and lightnings and a thick smoke on the mount, so that the people trembled. And Yahweh called Moses up and said to bring up the priests. But Moses replied, "You have charged us to set bounds around the mount and sanctify it." But Yahweh said, "Away, get thee down, that thou go unto her." But the priests and the people could not break through, for none can deliver out of his hand.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Hallelujah. Just gonna end like that. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Very good. Shirley Ann.
Oh, you want me to do the doxology?
No.
I wasn't.
She
I
wasn't. She
wasn't.
didn't see
I
my
wasn't.
text message. She was.
Right. I
She didn't
saw
see
it.
my
Don't
text
worry.
message.
I did. I saw something. That's why I stopped, because I did have a couple more verses to go, but I stopped. I'm through.
Nah, I'm
I
just saying
texted
that
you 5
because
minutes ago. I texted you twice.
I saw
I'm
it.
just
I saw it
saying that
twice. I
because
was
that's
reading. Can you hear me reading fast? Can you hear me reading fast? I was reading fast.
Okay.
I'm sorry. All right.
Go ahead,
okay.
Shirley. Take your
I'm
time.
just saying that because I think that summed the whole thing up. That was beautiful. I enjoyed everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Just remind me going forward to go before Vanessa, Michael, and Miranda, because they are a tough act to follow. Okay. But thanks be to Yahweh. I enjoyed it all. This all of this book so far that we're reading here is just talking about Yahweh fulfilling his promise that he made to Abraham. And that's so beautiful to me every time I read another chapter. He started off by bringing the children of Israel down into Egypt as he had told Abraham that he would, by way of Joseph already being down there to prepare the way for them. And it's so perfect how Yahweh, sets his word goes out and he carries it out, and everything that happens is in fulfillment of him carrying out his promise. So I'm not going to go too much into what's already been said, because all the speakers have really brought it all the way up. Very beautiful. And Yahweh started out with the children of Israel telling them, giving them his name, introducing himself unto them. To show forth his power, and that it was his word that was going to fulfill his purpose, his promise that he had given to Abraham. So he made himself known unto Moses, so that he could give his name unto his people who he chose, who he had promised to deliver up out of the land of Egypt after it was him, we can never forget, that put them down there. So he did remember them, as has already been mentioned, and came up and delivered them and showed forth his power, uh, and truly did show forth through all of these things that no one can deliver out of his hand, and that it was by mighty hand that he was going to deliver the children of Israel up out of Egypt. And he kept mentioning that over and over again. He kept mentioning it so that they may know that I am Yahweh, to show forth that there is truly none to deliver out of his hand, Yahweh, the Ayah Asher Ayah. And it was important that he said that to Moses, because he was going to prove to them that he would be whatever he willed to be. He had to show Pharaoh that it wasn't Pharaoh, it wasn't what you thought, how you thought it should go, but it's how I say it's going to go. Because Pharaoh kept thinking, no, I'm going to do it this way, even though Moses kept telling him, thus said Yahweh, this is what you do, or else I'm going to do this. So he did prove himself to Pharaoh. He delivered the children of Israel up out of Egypt, and by way of the Red Sea, and he showed forth his power by the rod that he had given to Moses to show his signs to the people throughout all the time that from the first time he went unto Pharaoh up until the point of him parting the Red Sea, that it was by the rod of Elohim that his power was going to be shown by Moses, through Moses and Aaron. So they come through the Red Sea, and Pharaoh and his host were drowned in the Red Sea, to fulfill what Moses had told him, that you will see my face no more. So he had to be removed as far as that particular manifestation of that beast man of sin in Pharaoh. So they came to the wilderness after they crossed through the Red Sea by the power of Yahweh. And Yahweh did lead them all the way. He was with them every step of the way, a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, to prove that he was always with them. And they came through the Red Sea, they came to the wilderness of sin. And as soon as they got out there, they started murmuring. After all that Yahweh had already shown them, they began to murmur, and they were hungry. And Yahweh told Moses that he was going to rain bread from heaven to prove them as to whether they were walking his way or not. So the murmuring was necessary, because Yahweh said it to be so that he could prove them to walk in his way or not. And he did hear their murmurings against him, which they thought they were murmuring against Moses and Aaron. But Yahweh heard their murmurings against him. And so he had to, he chose this to prove them. And then one of the ways he set up to prove them, he told them specifically about the bread that he was going to give them bread in the morning, and in the evening they were to eat flesh, which was going to be by means of quail in the evening and the manna in the morning. And he told them they were to gather according to, an omer per man, just enough for what they needed. And he that gathered much had nothing over, he that gathered little had nothing, weren't lacking. So he gave Moses specific instructions to give them. Told them they were not to leave any until the morning. Of course, in order for them to prove them, that's what that was done for. Some hearkened not, and they bred worms and stank, because they did not, adhere to the word of Yahweh. And then he told them also to gather twice as much on the 6th day, because on the 7th day was the Sabbath, which was holy unto Yahweh. And it did not breed worms after they held it over on the 6th day, because by the word of Yahweh it wouldn't, because he told them he wasn't gonna have any manna to come down on the Sabbath day. And he told them that there would be no manna on the 7th day, but of course, to prove them, it had to be manifest that some didn't believe and they went out on the Sabbath and they didn't find any manna. So this is the beginning, is showing me how that the instructions that Yahweh give us to follow, to walk circumspect, those things have to be given to us, those instructions, specific instructions by way of the Holy Spirit to seek to prove us, to see whether we will walk in his way or not. So that's why the gospel is preached as a witness and to teach us to be obedient unto Yahweh. So he also instructed Aaron to take the manna, an omer of the manna to be kept in the testimony in the Ark of the Covenant for their generations. To show that that's how Yahweh fed them while they were in the wilderness. And they did eat manna for 40 years until they came into the borders of Canaan land. Then they, afterwards, they entered into, they camped in Rephidim, and they were murmuring again due to a lack of water. And Moses was instructed to take his rod and to smite the rock and for the people to have water to drink. He did so. He was obedient unto Yahweh. And that rock we know was talking about the Messiah. And he was that living water for the people to drink of, as far as partaking of his Holy Spirit, which was going to be poured out on the day of Pentecost, and so that they would never thirst anymore. And then also in the 17th chapter was so beautiful to me. Yahweh gave me a beautiful revelation on Amalek. When you first go into the 17th chapter, it said that Amalek came up against to make war with Israel. Now Amalek was an enemy of Israel. I looked up something about the nation of the Amalekites or Amalek. They were an enemy to Israel. And there's only one, they were the first one to make war with Israel after they came out into the wilderness. And that made me look at Revelations 12 and 8, the first one to make war. So it showed me who Amalek really was representing. The first to make war, there was war in heaven. Michael, his angels fought against the dragon, Satan and his demons, and prevailed not. So I looked closer at Amalek and see what this was talking about here. And that was the first mention of Joshua or Yahshua in the book of Exodus, where Moses told him to choose out men to go fight with Amalek. And Moses was to stand on top of the hill with the rod of Elohim in his hand. And Yahshua defeated Amalek. Now there's only one that can defeat that beast man of sin, and that is Yahshua. He was the first one to make war with Israel. So Yahshua had to be the one to defeat him. And I just saw so pretty how that's why there was the first mention of him, because of that war. And it was him that was going to defeat Amalek. And Yahshua, as we find out on the other side of the cross, if you will, that after he poured out his Holy Spirit, the last enemy that shall be destroyed was death, or the adversary. So he defeated the first one and he defeated the last one. And Yahweh swore that he would have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Now Amalek was the son of Eliphaz, which was the firstborn of Esau. And that's why the Amalekites were enemies to Israel, because we know as far as Jacob and Esau, that Yahweh, according to his purpose of election, has set it up with Jacob and Esau. He said, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. So Amalek came forth from Esau. Now, for Yahweh said that he was going to make war with Amalek for generation to generation, it took me to Deuteronomy Numbers 25 and 8, where it says, Amalek was first among the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. And also in Deuteronomy 25 and 17, 19 to 19, when Yahweh hath given thee rest from all thine enemies, has given thee the land which he gave thee for possession, thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven and not forget it. Now, Amalek is what I saw by reading this, is that Amalek was representing the carnal mind and must be utterly destroyed, which you shall not remember forever. It must be utterly destroyed. And to conclude that, with 1 Samuel 15:13, he said, this is when Samuel anointed Saul as king. The first thing that he told him, remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he said, wait for him in the way when he came up from Egypt. And he told him to go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, spare them not. And it gave me a clear understanding as to why Yahweh was so angry with Saul about not destroying Amalek. I know it was because of disobedience, but he showed me a little deeper into that because of what he had declared back there with Moses, that he would make war with Amalek from generation to generation, and that he would be destroyed in Numbers, that he shall be destroyed. His latter end shall be that he perish forever. And that they should be blotted out. Thou should blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven and not forget it. So when he gave Saul those instructions, it was a serious matter because the word of Yahweh had gone out that Amalek was to be destroyed forever. And that is why the kingdom was rent from his hand. And I saw that so clear because I've always wondered why. I know it's because of disobedience, but I always wondered a little bit more about that, as far as why that particular incident caused the king to be rent out of his hand. But when Yahweh showed me that the Amalek representing the carnal mind, and it had to be utterly destroyed, is what it was representing. And when Yahweh had brought us into the land that he had given to us for possession, and that we should have rest from all of our enemies. And then, so the carnal mind has to be destroyed forever because it's an enmity with Yahweh. How does that go? For the carnal mind is an enmity with Yahweh. It is not subject to the law of Yahweh, neither indeed can it be, so it must be utterly destroyed forever. And I thought that was beautiful. And so Moses went on. After that was when Ruel came unto Moses and counseled him to appoint judges to rule over the people, and to pick out able men that feared Elohim, because Moses was standing before the people from morning to evening to inquire of Elohim. So by the word of Yahweh, the wisdom that came through Ruel for him to choose out men to take the load off of him was what was necessary at the time. And he told Moses to tell the people. And after that, they came into the wilderness of Sinai on June the 3rd, as was so thoroughly just got into. And commanded Moses to tell the people to clean up and wash their clothes and to be ready against the third day, which would have made it June the 6th, the third day from June the 3rd. And June 6th, and Yahweh would come down in the sight of all the people from Mount Sinai, which was talking about the word being made flesh. Because he would come down in the word of all the people, in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And that was talking about representing Yahweh, making himself known unto them. On June the 6th, the Messiah was born in the flesh on June the 6th. So this was representing the word being made flesh. And Yahweh did answered Moses from the mount by a voice and called Moses up into the mount and gave him the instructions of the Ten Commandment law. Moses went down to the people and spoke all the words of Yahweh to them. And the people feared and asked Moses not to speak unto them anymore. For him to speak unto them instead of Yahweh, unless they die, because they had not gotten to the point where they knew they had to have a mediator still. And Moses at that time was their mediator. So I'm gonna cut it off right there, and I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hallelujah. All right. That was good. I really enjoyed everybody. Y'all did really, really good. I know some of y'all were nervous and it was your first time and everything, but you can't tell. Everybody did really, really well. Some of y'all went less than 10 minutes. Some of y'all went more than 10. Some of y'all went more than 15. But nobody really went over 20 minutes. So just kind of getting a feel of how it feels to kind of go with the flow. Y'all picked out beautiful principles. It was beautiful. I just want to touch a couple of things and bring out a couple of principles that you guys may want to chew on based on what you've read so far. So first thing, when Moses was born and they had the death decree out there, it says that at the age of 3 months, Moses' mother hid him. She hid him for 3 months, and after she couldn't hide him anymore, she put him in the ark. And she pitched it with slime, but then without. And so when you look up pitch, it's like a dark black or brown semi-liquid substance that kind of keeps water from getting in the ark, basically. And so what I was looking at with that, of course, the principle of 3, you got to have water. But what I was looking at is how when Noah and them were in the ark, they didn't get wet. Moses was in the ark, he didn't get wet. When the children of Israel went through the Red Sea, they didn't get wet, but they were actually having to go through the water. But Pharaoh and his host got wet. The wicked back there with Noah, they got wet. Those other children that were condemned to death, they got thrown into the rivers because there were some kids that got killed. There were some Hebrew babies that did get killed during that death decree, and they got thrown into the river. And so that was something I was looking at. But anyway, that's a whole other point. So 3, you got water. And so when you look at Exodus 15 and 22, which I want to show y'all this real quick, and then it's only like a few points I got, and it will be done for tonight. Exodus 15, 22. Sorry, take that down. Let's see. BlueLetterBible.org, Exodus 15, 22. This was beautiful to me. Once they got up out of Egypt and they were singing their little songs and all that, as soon as they got through singing, I saw Miriam answer saying, "Sing ye to Yahweh." As soon as they got through singing their songs, 3 days later, it says, so Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Why were they looking for water after 3 days? Because they don't even know why they were looking for it after 3 days, but the pattern is 3. On the 3rd day, he divided the waters. When the Messiah was 30 years old, he got baptized. After 3 months, Moses had to go to some water. The pattern is 3. And then the 3rd step of the tabernacle, you have the brazen laver. So, of course, 3 is water. So they're looking for water, right? So when they came to Marah, they couldn't drink the waters because it was bitter for them to drink. And so when Yahshua goes to John to be baptized, how he fulfilled this part of it, Yahweh showed Moses a tree to put in the water to make the water sweet for them to be able to drink. So when John was baptizing those dead Jews and they had to confess their sins, they had to confess that they were dead, and then he had to dunk them in the water or bury them unto the death, that made the water bitter. And so Yahshua, being the resurrection, being who he is, when you put that tree in the water, it made the water sweet for them to be able to drink now. And so when Moses put that tree in the water for them to turn the water sweet so they can drink it, that's Messiah. When he got baptized by John, he actually fulfilled that by when he was put into the water or whatever. Now they've been baptized unto his death. And so now he's making it sweet for them to be able to drink now. They don't have to be baptized. They don't have to be water baptized anymore. So that was one point. another point that I wanted to make, when you get to the 20th chapter of Exodus, I believe it is, when the cloud sit on top of the mountain and Yahweh began to speak that law to them. If we go over here to Matthew, the 5th chapter. Now in the law, you got the 12 tribes of Israel coming around that mount, and the cloud or Yahweh speaking to them from that mount, right? So the Messiah had to fulfill, I keep on doing Matthew 5th chapter. The Messiah had to fulfill that. And so Matthew, the 5th chapter, it said, and seeing the multitude, he went up into a mountain. And when he was set, that cloud had to sit on that mountain, his disciples came unto him. And how many disciples was it? It was 12 of them. Just like the 12 tribes of Israel had to come to that mountain. And when he saw the multitude, he had to go up into the mountain, and he had to sit, because that cloud had to sit on the mountain on June the 6th and speak out the law to them. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, blessed are the poor. So he began to teach them. He began to teach his people. And then if you keep reading, he also starts telling them about thou shalt not do this and thou shalt not do that, and so forth and so on. So he's actually telling them about the laws too. Same thing that Yahweh did back there in the law when the cloud sat on the mountain back then. He began to give them the 10 Commandment law. And see right here where it says, thou shalt not commit adultery. He's repeating the same thing. You have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit. So he's repeating what happened back there on June 6th. And so he's fulfilling that by going to the top of the mountain and sitting. So that was one thing. Another thing I want to show y'all real quick. And then with the manna and the quail, right? So when Yahweh rained down the manna and the quail, I think I've talked about this before, but in the law, they had the manna and the quail. Now, when Yahshua fulfilled this, it was two different accounts. The first time he saw the multitude, he gave them 2 fish and I think 5 loaves of bread. And the second time he gave them 2 fish and 7 loaves of bread. 7 and 5 equals 12. So you got to have 12 loaves of bread total, because you got to pick up the 12 loaves of bread in the holy place, and you also got to pick up the 12 tribes of Israel. So when he saw the multitude and the people were hungry, he had to feed them fish and bread in the fulfillment. Why was it fish and not quail? Because back in the law and the prophets back then, that was before they actually had a law. They were not bound down by a law. And so quail, they're birds, they can actually fly free. Israel was free from that law. But in the fulfillment of it, now they're bound by that law. And if you look at a fish looks like a sea-bound or a water-bound bird, basically, when it's, going in the water, whatever. So then he had to do it with fish, because fish were bound to the lake. They were bound down by that law. So that's why he fulfilled it using the fish and the bread. Another one, what was the other one? Oh, let me ask y'all. Okay, so y'all can unmute yourself, get ready to answer this question. I got 2 questions. The first question is, what signs did Moses perform at the burning bush?
What
And of course, if I'm
signs?
asking something, yeah, what signs did Moses perform at the burning bush?
A rod on the serpent.
Oh, he performed the rod, the hand in the chest for lepers, and the blood on the ground. I mean, for
Anybody?
the blood for the water.
The rod with the serpent and the hand
Mm-hmm.
at the burning bush.
Yeah, at the burning bush, what signs did he perform?
The rod and the serpent with the rod and the hand. He told him that if they don't believe, he should do the other signs of the
Right.
blood.
With the blood.
Mm-hmm. So how many signs did he perform?
Leprosy, the hand turned to leprosy.
2. He performed 2.
He performed 2, but he talked about 3.
He performed
That's
2,
right.
but he told them
Right.
that when he go into
Got 2
Egypt, if
water.
they don't believe him, this is what he should do.
Go get
That's
water.
right.
Yeah.
Very good. Very, very good. So my point is, because I know I used to say all the time, at the burning bush, he, put the rod on the ground, turned to a serpent, he did a die, he put his hand in his bosom, then he poured the water on the ground, turned to blood. But that actually didn't happen at the burning bush.
No.
Yahweh told him, if they don't hearken to the voice of these 2 signs,
Right.
Right.
then you'll turn the water into blood when you get down there. Moses had to believe that.
Right.
Moses believed Yahweh. And so when he gets down into Egypt, and because that was the very first plague,
Right.
that was the first plague that Yahweh performed down there in Egypt, and Moses had to believe Yahweh. And so when that was, so that was my point. So he only performed 2 of those signs at the burning bush,
Right.
and then Yahweh told him about 3 of them, though. All right, and so then let me
Carla,
ask you this. So,
Carla, before you ask a question, I noticed I just wanted to say something, if you don't, if you will allow me, but less than maybe 2 minutes. Okay, great.
go ahead.
I noticed you were talking about the pitch that the ark was made of. Or when I was growing up, we grew up in the rural area in Jamaica, and when I was growing up, my father, we usually catch our water or drinking water in big drums, like those big blue barrels. So he would put it at the back of the house. But the pitch is the same thing as the tar. Do you know the tar that they use to asphalt the road? That black tar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the tar usually come in the drum. So whenever the workmen finish with the drums, my father would collect them, and he would use it to catch water for us to drink. Now, growing up as a child, because we didn't have refrigerator, he always tell us that this is the drinking water, and it was always cool as if it was stored in a fridge. It was since I came to class, when I came to class and I started reading and understanding Moses placing that ark, the pitch that is on it, it's like the tar. What the tar does, it keep baby Moses in the ark very cool from being hot. It was watertight. The slime that was placed around the ark, any insect, because the ark was placed in the flags amongst the river, because it was not actually in the river as they taught us in church. It was placed in that at the edge, in the flags or the grassy part that you see grow up. Now, any insects or anything that would go onto the ark, it would stick to the slime that is around the pitch. So if you notice how Yahweh really protect Moses in that ark, and even a natural example of the pitch that would keep it cool was something that I experienced growing up, how we keep the water cool for us to drink.
Wow, that's awesome. Very good. That's awesome. Yep, I did read that the pitch was like asphalt or tar. Very good.
Yes.
Another question, and I asked this last time, but I want to be clear on it. Matter of fact, I won't. I'm just gonna read it. I won't ask it. So Exodus 4. We're gonna start at 18, because I think some of us were thinking that Moses, his wife, and his children went down into Egypt with him, and they did not. So I'm going to read it again. Start at the 18th verse of the 4th chapter. And Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law. I think that's the part that confuses us. But if you read from Exodus, the 3rd chapter, all the way to this point here, he was still at the burning bush talking to Yahweh. Because if you go back to the 3rd chapter of Exodus and come all the way down, so Yahweh's telling him, go to my children and tell them this, tell them that, and Moses is answering Yahweh, still at the burning bush though, and said, behold, they won't believe me, they won't hearken unto my voice. And Yahweh said, what's that in? So he showed him the signs at the burning bush. All this was going on at the burning bush, right? He plucked his hand in his shirt, all those things like that. Moses still had excuses. Who made man's mouth? Moses, blah, blah, blah. So all of this is happening at the burning bush. So when it says Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, he just went back from the backside of the mountain and went back to his father-in-law. He was not in Egypt. So Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said unto him, let me go, I pray thee, and return unto my brethren which are in Egypt. So he was not in Egypt. Right. And see whether they be yet alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. And Yahweh said unto Moses, in Midian, he was in Midian, go, return into Egypt, for all the men are dead which sought thy life. And Moses took his wife and his sons and set them upon an ass, and he, Moses, returned to the land of Egypt, and Moses took the rod of Yahweh in his hand. So Moses' wife and his sons, they stayed in Midian with his father-in-law. So when it says Moses went to return to Jethro, so when Moses went to return to Jethro, it wasn't that he was returning from Egypt. He was returning from the backside of the mountain where he saw the vision at. He was still in Midian. He was still in Midian at the time when he took his wife and sons. So he took his wife and sons and set them on an ass and sent them to his father-in-law Jethro. So when you get to Exodus, the 18th chapter, after they come up out of Egypt, it said Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard all that Yahweh had done for Moses and the people of Israel.
Right.
And Jethro, his father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back, because Moses sent her back from the backside of the mountain to Jethro, his father-in-law, after her and her two sons, which the name of Gershom, he said, is Azar, and the name of the other one, Eleazar. And Moses' father-in-law came with his sons and his wife unto Moses the wilderness. So they were with Jethro before Moses went to Egypt. And so Moses sent Zipporah and his two sons on the ass in the land of Midian to Jethro. And when they came up out of Egypt, that's when he reunited with his wife and his two sons.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect sense.
Okay, perfect. Okay, cool. I
I
think
have
that
one
was,
question, Carla.
yes.
Why did he, okay, when you read that, okay, why did he put them on an ass then if they didn't come down with him?
To send them back to his father-in-law, to the father.
Yeah. Yeah, so let me go back. All right, let's try this. Okay, so it said, Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said unto him, let me go, I pray thee. And let me go to Egypt. So evidently he wasn't in Egypt yet. And it said, Yahweh said unto Moses in Midian, go, return into Egypt. So at this time, Moses was still in Midian. He hadn't went to Egypt yet.
Right.
Moses took his wife and his sons and set them up on an ass, and Moses, returned to the land of Egypt, and Moses took the rod of Elohim in his hand, and Yahweh said unto Moses, go, da, 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 da. So basically right here, when Moses put his wife and his two sons on the ass, he put them on the ass to send them to Jethro, because it's not that they lived with him, but they had to go to stay with Jethro while Moses is going to Egypt. That's why. Because right here, he wasn't in Egypt yet.
No.
Okay.
Hey, Carla, as Exodus 18:2 is a good point also.
Yeah, that's where I just went a minute ago. 18.
Okay, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make a point there too, because I had thought about that when I was reading through from Exodus 4 and 19, because it said, was it 4 and 19? Yeah, 4 and 20 rather. He took his sons and his wife, and he returned to the land of Egypt. So I was thinking that he returned with them. And then when I got here, I actually went back to that because I remember seeing that. And I was saying, now, did he go or did he not go? But then the way it reads is, it's so sensitive, because it says, and her two sons, then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back, as if when Moses was down in Egypt, sent Zipporah back to Midian, which is what I was thinking, that he must have sent her back for him to bring her and the sons to him once they got to Sinai. That's what I was thinking, because I was like, oh, and see, that had never been brought out to me in any way before. Yeah. But that is a fine, thin line right there.
I used to think the same thing. That's why why I was able to bring it, because that was shown to me this way too. I thought the same thing. But it was like he wouldn't have been able to do his job and focus if his wife and son was there anyway. But anyway, so you know how we get. We get on their nerves sometimes, but anyway.
Yeah, because he said after he had sent her back. So that's when I was wondering. I was like, okay, if he sent her back, so then maybe that's why. So I just kind of didn't know, but I kind of left it. I did go back though. I actually went back and reread that. So for you to bring that out, I really appreciate that, because I had gone back over that a couple times trying to figure it out in my head what exactly happened. Yeah, because I actually put sons in my Bible. I actually put sons right there because I wanted to. Yeah, I should have brought it to attention. Yeah, but okay, that's good. Thank you.
No problem. Because right here, this is when he took them back. Right here, when Moses put them on the ass and sent this is when he sent them away. While he was in Midian, he sent them to his father-in-law right before he got ready to leave. Because right before he got ready to leave, the poor, circumcised their child.
Right, and that's what I was going to ask that question too. I was just thinking that. So about the circumcision, because I read it on down somewhere else. I think it was, I read it down somewhere else. When the circumcision took place, that Zipporah did, she took a sharp knife and circumcised her son and threw it at her husband's feet and said that, a bloody husband thou art, because of the circumcision. That made me wonder also about that circumcision. Was that circumcision that's in chapter 4, verse 25, was that circumcision? Because I read it somewhere back here in 1819 or something about Moses it was after Yahweh was coming after Moses, sought to kill Moses, or was it sought to kill the son? That's what made me think about all of this, because if it was the son coming down to Egypt, if that son was coming down to Egypt, we know that the circumcision was given to the Israelites. And so as a result of that, if the son was coming to, it's as if Gershom was circumcised, but Eliezer wasn't. Is that the other son? Yeah. So it made me wonder about that.
So to answer your question, these things are written not quite, they're in order, but not quite directly in order like that. So these are the things, accounts that Moses, so when you first read where Moses sent them back to Jethro and he went, and when that, so right here, where was I at? Okay. And Yahweh said unto Moses and Midian, go return into Egypt, for all the men that sought thy life are dead. Moses took his wife, set them on the ass, and he returned to the land of Egypt, and Moses took the rod of Elohim in his hand. Pause. So he's saying that so right here, he returned to the land of Egypt. But the next verse says, and Yahweh said unto Moses, when thou goest to return into Egypt, so he's not in Egypt yet still, see that thou do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in thine hand, but I will harden his heart, that he shall not let the people go. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, thus saith Yahweh, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And I say unto thee, let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn. Now this is before he gets to Egypt now.
Right.
And it came to pass, by the way, in the end, this is by the way, before Moses actually gets into Egypt, before he actually comes to Egypt, that Yahweh met him and sought to kill him. Moses still hadn't left Midian yet. Yahweh was getting ready to kill Moses. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet, Moses' feet, and said, surely a bloody husband art thou to me. So he let him go. Then she said, a bloody husband thou art because of the circumcision. And Yahweh said to Aaron, so now Yahweh's talking to Aaron now, because he was already in Egypt anyway. Now he's talking to Aaron, saying, go into the wilderness to meet Moses.
Right.
Because Moses still isn't in Egypt yet. So when this happened, he still wasn't in Egypt yet, evidently, because Moses went out and met Aaron before they actually came down into Egypt.
Right.
So clearly, when the circumcision took place, Moses wasn't in Egypt yet, because Aaron still hadn't come out there yet. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I'm saying I'm saying the way this reads to me is he was on his way down, because it said he sought to kill him because he was on it. It was like he was on his way down. there because it says by the way in the inn, and I was wondering about that too because that's INN. That's like a place to abode, right? INN. And
Let's see. Let's look it up.
That's like a because I looked up quite a bit of stuff, but I didn't look up in.
Mm-hmm.
And logically speaking, because even our natural lives, we can see that happening. Because if Moses was going down in Egypt to it's a war he was going to with Pharaoh, logically speaking, he wouldn't take your wife and the young child with you going, because Moses, that would be like a distraction unto Moses to be going back and forth with Pharaoh, has a wife to deal with. So Yahweh just take care of that and let her stay up in Midian and let Moses go and take care of the business.
Right.
So that is even easy to understand, why it is that way.
Right.
I understand.
But,
I just had questions.
No. Yeah. So the inn, what I'm looking at with the inn, it says that it's an establishment or buildings where travelers can seek lodging and usually food and drink. They are typically located in the country or along a highway. The term inn historically characterized a rural hotel which provided lodging, food, So Moses, before he goes into Egypt, he had to actually, because Yahweh wasn't going to let him, he wasn't going to be able to go and do what he had to do because he hadn't did what Yahweh said, because Moses was circumcised, but he didn't circumcise his children. He didn't keep the covenant that was given to the Hebrews. And so my point is, all this happened before he gets to Egypt. So Zipporah and the sons did not go into Egypt with him at all. And then Yahweh said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. And he went and met him in the Mount of Elohim and kissed him. So if Aaron met him at the Mount of Elohim, then he was still right there where he was at the burning bush. Because the burning bush was where he had the vision of first. So he was still in the same, he was still in Midian, basically.
That's right.
When all this happened.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
He met
the Mount of Elohim. That would have answered my question. But see, when I saw in, it made me think of somewhere that he was along the way, and I'm like, wow, they have an inn out there?
So the Midian is a whole city. Midian is a whole town. It's not like, they just had, it was just Moses and his father-in-law. There was the other ones living there. They had a well that, other men was, harassing the women when they were trying to water their flocks. You had inns, you had all kinds of things going on in Midian, but it was all still in that same area, the same land.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
That
doesn't mean
I guess because when we're reading it, we're just looking like just a little track that you walk to, but no, it's not like that. It's big.
Yeah, that's clearing it up for me. That absolutely cleared it up for me. The part that cleared it up for me was when you said that he was in the mountain of Elohim. That lets you know right there he's still there. Okay, it's a lot of little bitty things, that makes the difference.
Details,
that's right. Thank you.
It's a lot of details.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely, very good.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a micro, what do you call that glass? Magnifying glass. Read this.
So what we're going to do, that's right. So what we're going to do for next week, we're going to continue to read. We're going to read from the 21st chapter to the 25th chapter of Exodus. And then make sure y'all take really good notes, because we're going to do popcorn. I'm going to be asking y'all a lot of detailed questions. So as we're asking the questions, make sure y'all take notes so y'all can score y'all points and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll kind of go through chapter by chapter, different principles that Yahweh brings out, shows us. So 21 through 25, take really good notes, because I may ask you chapter and verses too when you're answering the question. So that's going to be the assignment for Thursday. And then I think 25. Yep. So nope. Let's stop at the 24th chapter, 21 through 24, and then read Genesis, the first chapter. That's your assignment. So it's 5 chapters still, but Genesis 21 through 24, and then Genesis, the first chapter. Because we got to go in order, because when Moses went up in 24th chapter, that's when he saw the vision of the first chapter of Genesis. So we're going to go in order.
Okay.
So 21 through 24, Genesis, first chapter. That's the reading assignment.
So is it that you're supposed to read the entire chapter of 24? Because it was in 24 and 16. That's when Genesis 1 and 1 comes in. So do we read the entire 24th chapter?
Yeah, you can. That's fine.
Okay.
hmm And then we'll kind of start going through. I cannot wait for next week. Oh my goodness. Next week is going to be phenomenal. When we break down the Genesis first chapter, my goodness, I cannot wait. I'm excited about that. And y'all are almost caught up to the kids. I'm going to kind of slow the kids down a little bit. And for you guys that are just joining us, whatever. So my kids are a little bit farther ahead of the adults. And I'm going to actually put the adults against the kids. It's going to be a battle in a couple of weeks. So I know my kids are going to win, but I want y'all to try hard. Don't give them any slack, because they definitely not going to give y'all any slack. And y'all did have one of the kids that was kind of eavesdropping last week. He was kind of listening in, scoping out the territory. So just so y'all know, the kids have been scoping y'all out. So they waiting on y'all. Y'all got about 2 weeks to get caught up to them. And then I'm putting y'all head up with the kids to see how this battle goes with the kids.
Okay, it probably was
So-
a mirror.
It was a mirror, yeah. Would it help if I sent y'all specific questions to kind of help y'all read, to look for certain things? Would it help if I sent you questions, or do you want to just wait till Thursday to get, do the
Definitely for my own behind. Send me a question.
Send
me
us questions.
Mm-mm.
Send us
Yes.
questions.
Okay.
Somebody's saying no.
Okay.
They're not me. No, send some
Not me
questions.
either. Send me questions.
Make us work
Okay,
harder.
That's right.
I'll send questions. You don't have to have the questions answered, but the questions are
Be
just given to
specific.
kind of help you focus on what you're reading. You know what I mean? It's just an exercise to kind of help you focus on what you're reading. Because to kind of, pay attention to certain details. Because who would have ever picked out the detail? Not that it's an important detail, but, when I asked the question last week about what was the relationship. Matter of fact, I'm going to ask it to anybody else that went on here last week. What's the relationship between Moses and Aaron's parents? What was their relationship besides husband and wife? Does anybody know?
Their parents. Oh,
Was it?
yeah.
Is it
They were
cousin? Is it cousin or aunt?
He married his aunt. She was his aunt.
Right.
Right. He married his aunt.
He married, right, because his
Amram married his aunt. That's correct. hmm
Right.
And did y'all, when y'all in your reading, did you pick up that Korah? Remember the battle between Korah, Nathan, and Dathan, and all them in Numbers? That Korah was actually Moses' cousin.
Mhm.
No.
Did y'all
I didn't
pick
get
that up
that
in your
one.
reading?
No, I didn't. I
Mhm,
didn't
yeah,
get
so-
that one.
I think it's the 6th chapter of Exodus where it talks about, and this is that Moses and Aaron that went down and talked to Pharaoh when they were going through the children of Levi. Korah was actually Moses and Aaron's cousin, and so it was a big family dispute. Oh, and so tomorrow I would encourage anybody who's interested to join the Meridian class tomorrow. There's a transcript that we're going through, whatever, but in that particular transcript, we're not gonna give it away anyway. But it's a lot. I'm excited about it. So tomorrow we're having class. Announcement. Tomorrow we're having class at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Same time we're gonna be streaming live as well. So if you want to join us live or you want to join the actual Zoom, I'll send that link out. It's the same link as it is every Friday, but I'll send it out again. These are the announcements. We have the Dr. Kinley transcript readings on Wednesdays. We had a really good one yesterday. Wednesdays from 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. Thursday, we have the Basics and Foundation class. Fridays, Meridian has their original class session, 7 o'clock. And then we have the youth classes from 6:30 to 8:30 on Saturdays. And then Sundays, conference calls. We have these 3 special Zoom meetings coming up. We have one about with the couples and relationships, about adultery and fornication, things that Dr. Kinley taught and what's in the Bible. We have different couples that'll be telling their story on how Yahweh actually brought them a mate. We have another special Zoom session about the charts. We're going to be going through the charts and explaining the charts only. I'm excited about that one. And we have one more special Zoom class that's coming up with the introduction to the gospel for anybody that's new, that you want to introduce the gospel to. This will be a special class for that as well. Any questions, concerns, or comments, you can send them to idmrmeridianms@gmail.com. We'll try to get your questions and stuff answered as soon as possible. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Beautiful.
Awesome. All right, we're going to conclude with the doxology then. For now, to him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy, to the only wise Elohim, our Savior, through Yahshua the Messiah, our Sovereign, belong glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and ever. Let us all say hallelujah.
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 Thank you so
Hallelujah.
much.
Good
Love
night.